Welcome to another episode on our channel. Finally, I got the drawer done, such as it is. This was going to be a how-to video on how to make a small drawer, but I decided this was a how not to video on how to make a small drawer. I set myself up for failure. So there are at least two rules on how not to make a drawer for a very small workbench. So rule number one is don't plan in advance when you're making the workbench to include a drawer. Basically, the drawer was an afterthought, and that was my major downfalling. It just wasn't. The plans called for the legs to be a certain height. It's really not high enough for a decent drawer. It just isn't, but she's happy with it. And that's, at the end of the day, it makes my life happy. A happy wife is a happy life. It's cliche, maybe a bit sexist, but it is also very true. So that is rule number one. Rule number two, limit yourself, as I did, to construction material that you have on hand. That probably was at least as deadly as my first mistake. And here's why. As I was cutting the wood for the grooves to hold the bottom of the drawer, the pieces of wood, I got most of the way through cutting the groove. Everything was going fine until it wasn't. I ended up with a part of the wood, the thin part, it broke. It broke during the cut. And since I didn't have any more very thin wood on hand, I had to adapt. So instead of going from a traditional groove, I ended up with kind of a cheap lap joint. It's not even a rabbet joint. A groove joint goes with the grain of the wood. A rabbet joint, I can't spell it, R-A-B-B-E-T, not I-T, not like Bugs Bunny rabbit, rabbet. Anyway, that kind of joint, that groove goes across the grain of the wood. You probably don't care about the difference. Woodworkers do. It's very specific terminology, but the bottom line is, as I was cutting the groove, a big chunk broke. I don't know if I hit a knot or just a weak spot in the wood, but well, the bottom line, as you saw just now, and you're going to see right now, is that I had to glue the wood all the way around. It's there. It's just that it doesn't have the groove for that extra bit of security. The upside is that with a joint, when you're just cutting out a groove, or not a groove, but kind of a slot, you can stuff it with more glue. That's the upside. Another downside of not having of using the material that you have on hand is that I didn't have a very thin piece of wood large enough to cover the entire length of the drawer. So as ugly as sin here, but you don't see it, and more importantly, she doesn't see it. So I reinforced that by creating a divider. Now she's going to want more dividers. I just know her. My guess is that another divider, at least one more divider here, perhaps one here, could even be two slots. I'm just any number of configurations. And I will get more wood for that, but for purposes of completing this project, for the viewers at home, I stuck with the material I had on hand, or free material. And there's no such thing as free very thin pieces of wood that are about 19 inches long and 6 or 7 inches across. So that's the two big things. Yeah, I'm just not a happy camper. So let me take you through the rest of it. Let me set this thing aside. For the drawer supports, again, also not enough wood on hand, so I improvised. These things are hard drive sleds for an old Mac Pro that I have here at the house. 100% aluminum, good quality stuff. So what I did, I cut them down, and so that they now look like this. And I spray painted them. Well, one of them already knocked the paint off of it, but I knew she would want it black. She wouldn't want shiny metal underneath. I need to go through and touch it up, probably. You also notice that they are not even. They're that way for a reason. They're not big enough to support the drawer totally. Unfortunately, the drawer isn't going to have much stuff in it. It just isn't. So I had to offset them, had to stagger them, so it would provide even support, so the drawer wouldn't travel this way or that way as you're pulling it in and pulling it out. Let me get this thing back. I was going to make a wood finial for the drawer. It's amazing what you find when you start rummaging through junk drawers inside your kitchen or out in your garage, the designated junk drawer. I found this. It's a square finial, a little big, but she kind of likes it. And that's the main thing. Does she like it? And so far, the answer is yes, even though my dog is barking in the background. Hopefully my sound filter would catch that. So let me stick this thing back in. We can do this backwards. And to stop the drawer from continuing on its travel back, I use the one and only remaining decent piece of wood. Just glued that up so it's drawer stop, backstop, I should say. So yeah, this was kind of an adventure. Again, this is not the way that you make a drawer. I intend to eventually make do a video where you make a small workbench that you can buy inexpensive material. It was an artificial restriction I put on myself. And it was fun in some ways. It prompted me to kind of, adapt, improvise, and hopefully overcome. How much I overcame on this drawer remains to be seen. But it looks okay-ish. She thinks it looks okay. It holds things without falling apart, and she likes it. And those are the three major criteria. I do want to talk about one thing, though. If you decide to use a table saw, I made it a habit, or at least a policy, to never tell you guys what you should own or what you should buy. I'm going to make an exception this time. And it's this thing. It's called a gripper from, good grief, I have my glasses on. I thought I could get away with this. Sorry about that. The gripper from Microjig. I knew that. What this does is keeps your hand off the wood and away from the table saw. And as you can see, the purpose of this is to slide your wood across as you're cutting, either ripping a piece or however. What it does, it applies pressure on all three axes. It applies, let's say this is the fence. It keeps pressure against your wood against the fence. It keeps pressure down on the y-axis and then you got pressure going forward on the Z axis as you're pushing the wood through. That in combination with a riving knife will go a long way to keeping these things. Even if it isn't a danger to your fingers, kickback is a big deal. Just look for table saw kickback on YouTube, and you will see pieces of wood coming back at the operator at about 200 miles an hour. I even got so I positioned my table saw outside so it was not facing the house. We have glass double French doors leading out to the backyard, and I finally realized, like, oh, this is a bad idea. Let me turn my table saw 90 degrees so it kicks it back the other way, in case it doesn't use me as a stop before it gets to the window. Oh, so there you have it. A real short tutorial on how not to create a drawer. Like I said, when I do the workbench, low riding workbench that you make out of materials pretty cheap that you can get from the big box store, I'll do a proper drawer on that. It's just that when you run out of material, you run out of material, and you got to adapt, and things just go sideways from there. So this is a very short video, which is unusual from me. I tend to over-explain things, as my wife will testify. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, consider giving us a thumbs up, hitting the subscribe button, and hitting that alert button too. It supposedly helps with the YouTube algorithm. But as I tend to make a habit of saying, that anybody that knows how YouTube works probably doesn't have a YouTube channel. So anyway, have a good day, everyone.